Thank you all for being here. My name's Tiffany Tononi McNamara. I'm the director of Plan New Hampshire, and we're the nonprofit who's here coordinating these 2 days, which I'll talk a little bit about before we get into the meat of why we're here. Could you raise your hand if you were here yesterday for any session? Awesome, okay. Before anyone asks, these slides will be provided to the city on Monday, and they'll post them, so they will be available pretty much right away. And just so you know what we're going to talk about, briefly, I'm going to go over who the heck is Plan New Hampshire, what the heck is a charrette, who is our team that's here with us, and then we're really going to talk about like why we were here, the project area, what we learned about it, what we heard about it, and then the recommendations our team came up with. So briefly for Plan New Hampshire, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We've been around since 1989. Statewide, we work statewide, and we were really started by a group of architects who wanted a multidisciplinary space for people who care about the built environment in the state. So that means architects, civil engineers, municipalities, developers, all kinds of folks who really, really care about the future of the state come together through our programs, come together through this program that we're going to talk about specifically, and really try to give back to the state through their professional expertise. So for our charrette program, we've done over 80 charrettes in the state since 1996. Belmont was our first one. Almost every report is available on our website if you want to see how fonts have changed over the years. It's quite and how scanning has changed. So you can find those on our website if you're interested. Really what a charrette is just a listening, brainstorming, and design recommendation process. So usually they're like a 1 to 3 day process. Ours are 2 days, and it's a lot of on the fly, seeing, hearing, trying to kind of triangulate everything we've learned, and then bring our professional expertise to some design recommendations for whatever the reason is that we're in a community. So commonly a small town might say we want to revitalize our village center, as an example, or we want to incorporate our riverfront with our downtown, and that's like why our team comes. So for us, just for people's orientation, we come in and do a 2-day. Yesterday we were here, we toured the Millyard area. We had a stakeholder meeting and 2 community input sessions, which a lot of you participated in. And then today our team just worked until like 10 minutes ago on what it was we were gonna actually present. What are the recommendations? How are we gonna show you those recommendations? And then getting them into the slideshow. Rapid fire. As I said, the slides will be available pretty much right away to the city, but we also will follow up with a report that will be a little more detailed. So nothing new will be in the report, but a lot of what you hear today will be verbal because of the quick turnaround. So the report will actually have all of that detailed out so that it's memorialized and the community and the city has it for future reference. So I want to shout out to our team. Everyone on our team is a volunteer. So they themselves, and sometimes their firms, are supporting their Friday off, and then they come on a Saturday. We worked till about 8-ish last night, and we're back here at 8 in the morning. So it's a pretty big commitment for the 2 days. And it's really that multidisciplinary mix, people who are really passionate about giving back, kind of getting back to the root of what their professional expertise is as well. And every community we go into, we put a team together that's really unique to the reason we're there. That's a picture of our team, yay. Want to raise your hands, team? Ooh, okay. You will hear many of them speak today, but not all of us, because we can't be here for 5 hours. And this is a list of our team members. I'm not gonna read them, but you'll have these if you want to look into who they are, more about their firm. And we have 2 leaders who volunteered. So Jamie Simchek and Cassie Cashin, sorry. And I'm gonna pass it off to Jamie now. So they're gonna really take us into why are we here, what did we learn, and what are we recommending.
So just a little bit of history. We basically have an application process. Nashua applied in February. We met with them in March, and then obviously we're now here. And the whole idea was to discuss the Millyard area, which I'll show you about. There was a lot of talk about undeveloped land, circulation and wayfinding, connectivity to recreational and economic hubs, integration and modern infrastructure, and then also, a big part of it was respecting the history. So as you can see, here's a little bit of the project area. So we were focusing on the dotted, the area inside the dotted red lines, and also you'll see from some of the explorations we've done that we tried to really either bring the Millyard out of what that area is or kind of draw people into the Millyard. Again, here's a little bit more of a larger scope of the project area, but I'm sure you guys are all very well familiar with it. So now I'm going to turn it over to Cassie.
Okay, so we took a tour yesterday, about 2 hours of walking around the Millyard, and saw a lot of different things. So this is a word cloud, and it shows some of the major themes that came up a lot. The bigger they are, the more they came up. So, for example, the river was a hot topic, buildings, connectivity, parking, and then, so many of you were here to participate in our public input sessions, and we asked 3 questions. The first one was, what do you see? So the major themes that we saw were the lack of connectivity, Mine Falls Park and the river, huge recreation opportunities. There's currently a lot of asphalt and pavement, not enough greenery. The buildings and structures are deteriorating as well as the infrastructure. A lot of people said that they felt very isolated from downtown in the Millyard. There wasn't a lot connecting the two. There's not a lot of traffic and bike or pedestrian safety measures that are taken, but there is a lot of opportunities. It's a nice land area. There's a lot of buildings with a lot of potentials, and people really wanted to improve the gateway of Nashua. So then we asked people, what do you want to see? So again, connectivity, that came up a lot. So connectivity within the Millyard to the downtown, both for vehicles and pedestrians, because that's an issue for both of those. And then more wayfinding and more signage, because it's very confusing to navigate if you've never been in there before, or even if you have. People wanted to see more of a sense of place that preserves the history of the Millyard. Way more green spaces, maybe some opportunities for children, like playgrounds, fields, courts. More recreation focused on the river, like rental kayaking. Community spaces were a big theme. More areas where the community can come together, such as like farmers markets, food truck events, shops, and people really wanted to see more safety measures and lighting at night, as well as well-maintained sidewalks and roads. And then our last question, we asked, what else do we need to know? So one person actually said, we aren't just building housing, we're building community. So that really encapsulates the spirit of what we're trying to do here. There's a lot of history of environmental and industrial issues. There are a lot of opportunities that also come with a lot of constraints between the public and private ownerships in the area. The city's going through a zoning rewrite. Currently, there's no grocery stores in the area. That came up a few times. Much of the area is in a floodplain, so that is a big constraint. Conversations of a landmark to put Nashua on the map came up, and again, people are really just looking for a sense of community. So going into constraints in more detail, some of the biggest issues and things that we were working with is the limited access with what's already there. the existing utilities, such as the substation and all of the lines that go through the properties, the radio antenna. There's contamination and environmental concerns. It's a mix of city-owned property and privately owned property. And then there's a lot of natural features that you have to work with as well, such as being surrounded by the river and how a lot of it is in the floodplain, and all of the river banks are very steep, so that was something to keep in mind. So moving on to our recommendations, everyone came together and came up with some possible solutions and opportunities. So first, we're getting started with connectivity.
My name is Emma Rarick, and my group worked on connectivity. So some of the big things, some of the big opportunities that we saw were opportunities for easier access to Mine Falls. It's back there, but if you don't know where it is, can you find it? We thought there was an opportunity for better defined roads and paths. Whether if you're driving onto the site, in this bottom right picture from one of the entrances, you don't know which way to go. There's a one-way street in there. It's really not clear where you're trying to get to. Is it private area? Is it public area? Are you allowed to be there? There are some paths, like in this top right picture, which aren't very welcoming. You can cut through there. Should you be cutting through there? So better defining some of those things. And then on this picture, we highlighted some of those areas and some of the things that we have been talked about happening already, like the NIMCO building will be redeveloped. People have talked about putting a dog park down near the entrance near the Spine Road entrance, adding a little parking down by that dog park. There's been talk of adding a pedestrian crosswalk on the Veterans Parkway to help people get across that into the Millyard. And then looking at ways that people currently get to that northern part. There's a very narrow driveway that goes around, and it's narrow for cars, it's narrow for people walking to get to that parking lot area. And then this was a little more of a possibility drawing where if more area was redeveloped, there could be an opportunity to put a straighter pedestrian walkway right down through to the Mine Falls Spine Road entrance. We thought about the idea of putting a roundabout in on the Veterans Parkway at the southern entrance, so not the one with the traffic light at it, but the one to the south, that smaller entrance, to make it a little bit easier to get in and out of there, and then better defining the circulation, the roads on the site, so going down into that public parking area on the right, just making it clear that this is how you get to the parking area, and this is how you can get back out of the parking area. And then also working on a better defined path alongside that parking lot. So maybe you don't have to walk through the parking lot to get from the canal entrance to the other entrance. And open space and recreation opportunities.
Hi, I'm Iris Lin, and do you want to introduce?
I'm Jen Martell.
So in the following option, we are going to present our recommendation in terms of a gateway feature and open space and circulation. So here is the site plan that our idea is to create a gateway feature once people on the bridge and get into the Millyard district. So the gateway feature, we can use a lot of side elements like light pole with banners, street trees to highlight this area, even like some painting on the roadway to slow down the traffic and also like create multiple intersections that's safe for pedestrian crossing. And then the second idea is that since the Minko building is coming down and we have the opportunity to reconfigure the overall area, that we are thinking that the main circulation can come at the current existing curb cut, but then have the circulation in between two new buildings, and then going around to the end. And this idea is to preserve the existing historic building and celebrate the industrial heritage. And in this case, that we are thinking that the two buildings in the middle, can I point it? Can I use the cursor? Yeah. So we are thinking that these two buildings are the new residential building, and with their amenity space at the front here and one at the back. And then the new building here could be a mixed use, have like supportive service like dentist office or other retail space down below, and have residential at the upper level, and also a small retail office space here. And then these two are the existing building. And then the third one is the existing garage. But we think that because there are some homeless population in this area, that maybe we could turn this into a new building with transitional housing to accommodate them, and with other supportive service. And then as for the open space at the peninsula here, that we are thinking that it's private owned, but we would propose some like outdoor recreational opportunity like basketball court, a playground, and even an open lawn. And this open lawn could be used for soccer playing or like event space, so it could generate some revenue for the building owners. And then we also think about maybe some of the building can become a museum space. So then the use of the parking can be like workday to serve the office space user here, but during the weekend will be more museum visitor use the parking space. And then have the trail system go along the river to the mine fall, and also to the west side.
Thanks. I'm going to talk in a little bit more detail on some of the newer open spaces that we're proposing. So as Iris mentioned, along Pine Street, we're proposing some streetscape improvements so that as people are coming into town and driving down Veterans Parkway, they tend to be driving really fast. So we wanted to introduce some elements that would slow down the traffic and also sort of announce your arrival into the Millyard space. So what we're proposing is some, at the smokestack, which is really a beacon and like the gateway element, adding some signature lighting and really just highlighting that space, including some planted medians along the middle of Pine Street to slow people down. And those also provide a pedestrian refuge. So when people are crossing the street, if cars are whizzing by, they have a place to stop in the middle. Incorporating a lot more street trees and light poles, and then also incorporating brick sidewalks and crosswalks. There was a central space sort of at the main pedestrian crossing. One of the benefits of the new connectivity and circulation plan is that the whole frontage along Pine Street is no longer just a bunch of asphalt. It's actually green space. And we really want to play that up and have this central community green space be sort of the pedestrian entrance into the Millyard, as well as a spill-out area for any retail that might go in. And then it also provides sort of a connection between downtown and Mine Falls Park, because it's like a north-south pedestrian connection with this really nice open space. And then, we're really curious about this technology park peninsula with all of the parking. We did look into parking counts a little bit, and you can see just even in the aerial photo on the left that there's way more parking than the space needs currently as a partial industrial / office space. We sort of don't think that's the highest and best use of the building, and it will likely evolve into something else. As Iris mentioned, maybe a museum, maybe more of like a destination retail, like a brewery or something. Or maybe it continues to be, or maybe it turns into like condos or something like that. Regardless, we think that the parking can probably be seriously reduced. And that space can be turned into recreation space. We also kind of saw this as, we would recommend looking at Thompson's Point in Portland, Maine. It's like a very, very similar precedent. These two aerial photos are at the same scale, so you can see they're very similarly scaled, similar configuration, they're both in floodways, and you can see what's been done at Thompson's Point and sort of what's working and what's not. It's all under development currently, but some of the things that they've incorporated there into the buildings and into that open space are, they built a large pavilion, which is used for ice skating in the winter, and it becomes an event space in the summer. They hold concerts on the big green area. They have food trucks there, and they have, the Children's Museum actually came to that space. There's a brewery, there's maker space, and there's event space, so people can have weddings and all kinds of other events there. So we just think that's a really interesting precedent that could be looked at as a way of really generating revenue on this underutilized land. And I don't know who's next. Gordon, is this you?
Depends on which. Depends on which. Yeah, this is us. Okay. My name's Gordon Leedy, and I am a landscape architect and planner. And I live in the Nashua area and have for about 35 years. So I'm very familiar with this site. This is an adaptive reuse. It's in contrast to sort of keeping all of the existing buildings. We're looking at keeping portions of the buildings that are particularly interesting and perhaps adding on to them in a way that would allow them to have an enhanced use. Again, with the NIMCOR building being demolished or slated for demolition and reuse, there's also another building next to it that is, as we understand it, sort of up for grabs as well and is quite dilapidated. But the two buildings that are furthest to the south are quite nice and actually in really good shape and being productively used. So I'm going to take this off of here and walk over here because I can't do it with a cursor. So here's the existing technology center building. We have proposed a new roundabout that would provide access to Clock Tower Place as well as to this precinct. It shifts, it's further south than the existing signalized intersection, which would remain. So that provides some access. And then this is another access that is a contrasting spine to this north-south road that really provides kind of a more urban look. You would have buildings, sidewalk, parallel parking on a street with street trees on both sides, and so it would create this kind of urban spine that connects in a north-south direction. And then these are the existing buildings. The shingle style sort of currently small business incubator space. We are proposing to take down a central section, which is a little less. This area was an addition to that building at some point and has a little bit of a different style to it. It's taller, so we would propose building on the back of that This building is a sort of brick end cap that was a precursor to the rest of the building. And again, we take down the center portion and build another building, sort of incorporating this both stylistically and in terms of architectural form, as well as the building height. I'm showing these as 3 stories. They are 100,000 square foot buildings, and it could be a variety of uses. It could be incubator space. It could be office space. It could be commercial space, retail, commercial restaurants on the ground floor. We're proposing underground parking, so a full floor underneath these buildings for parking. And the existing lot, we think that this is approximately 600 parking spaces all in. So there's plenty of parking availability. This steps down to the river. We've got a parking lot down here for access to community gardens and a dog park or other park facilities related to the river. This building has a kind of facade on it that would, on the lower level, relate to the river, so that you would have parking under this, but sort of facing that toward the river. You'd have space that could be commercial space, it could be amenity space for residential buildings, it could be a number of things. And then moving further south, we're maintaining this existing small business building, and then where the garage is, again, we're adding to that and proposing transitional housing. This area sort of functions as its own little neighborhood, and then we are proposing to perhaps take down or punch through this existing sort of shed structure and a bridge across the canal to provide another access in this location. We talked a little bit about circulation, but it's our strong impression that this needs additional access to the parkway. And then over on the east side of the parkway and the roundabout, this ties into the existing Clock Tower Place parking area. We've got an access down to a redevelopment opportunity in 99 and 80, or I think that's right, and then a ramp access back up to provide ADA access. We're showing a connection through to under the bridge for a continuation of the Riverwalk, and this area becomes parking and recreation. This is somewhat more parking than the last scheme you saw. This is, I think, 270 spaces, Dave? 220 spaces. And then recreational amenities. This would be a skating track that would have various elevations and be a fun place to sort of race your friends with a play area inside of it, potentially a carousel or some other kind of fanciful use, and also the existing boat ramp. There's space for recreational like basketball courts and like hard court surfaces. And then coming around, there's a small boardwalk area to sort of, because it's very constrained in that area, and then it comes around and ties into the park and the existing trails. So that is that. We've got some opportunity to do farmers markets. We've talked about the carousel, and we've got this ice skating trail that could be kind of rollerblading trail in the summertime. This is This is just an image of the ice skating track. And then back to the plan. So Bob is going to talk about a little bit more detail in some of these areas.
Thank you, Gordon. I'm Bob White. I'm a landscape architect. Haven't we had fun coloring your Millyard green? So I missed part of yesterday, so some of the morning and early afternoon discussions, but I can tell you there were several voices that we heard into the evening, late afternoon into the evening, and one was when people are talking about what they see out there of the ocean of asphalt. And so our task is to listen to you and then translate that into strategies that can make it a better place and make it so that the greenery was a portion of that. So we have public spaces, we have street trees, we have gardens and courtyards, and also taking advantage of a very unique character of place and making it a place for people rather than more than just cars and trucks driving around there. We realize that we're talking about a future that the uses here will unfold over time, but it has wonderful bones. And as we look at it, the next thing we heard yesterday was we would like to preserve our heritage and reflect that in this. And I think one thing that we came away with walking around there, I certainly got it this morning, even though I had an umbrella in the early hours of the morning, trying to get a little more of a feel of it, is the character of the buildings there. While they look a little tired, they are fabulous bones, and the character of the materials and the scale and the design of the place, even though it was built for industry and a working environment, is rich in opportunities. And it's also from the standpoint of economic development, historic preservation, sustainability. The best thing we can do is find really, really good contemporary uses for the buildings that we have. Try to keep all the ones that are really good, and maybe but also have some opportunity for something fresh and new, so we can have something more than just something that is just a preserved historic environment, to have some optimistic about the future. We did hear a couple voices yesterday who said, oh, they look so terrible, just tear them all down. We're not going to go there. That's a hard one. So we think that there's so much character in many of these. What I wanted to do is just sort of tip the blinds open a little bit. How do I advance here? Right here. Just wanted to sort of just give you a little sense of hope about this question about the old buildings and what the new buildings are. So we actually looked across the street. The colors on this came out, I didn't color them that way before they got scanned. But anyways, we're looking right across the street from the Millyard, right in this area here where we have you can just see the edge of the building on the left that faces the parkway, and then we're heading down to the Millyard. This little 20-foot space here, while it looks pretty utilitarian right now, actually could be a very vibrant connector, because that's the space that takes you from the parkway down into the sort of eastern Millyard, and that's the route that we can go to follow the river and then come all the way around by the point. So we'd like to animate that, which means taking care of that building on the left there. Can't quite see all of it, but basically it has a stone base, it has a brick first floor, and what we think, and this is just an example of what we're looking at. This is the adjacent mill building here. What we're looking at is we could basically add a modern building on top of it and have it be in scale and character of sort of industrial architecture, but also have enough square footage in that building to actually make it worthwhile to do the renovation of the historic part, and then build a fresh new piece on the top to have more potential out of the building. So we just had a little fun with that. This is what it looks like if you sort of cover a roof and then add another floor or maybe two on top of where the brick ends there, right on the very left of the image. So we can basically take the space and then walk through this courtyard here heading towards the river. Just one area we were looking at. So here's another area. This was a part, in the Millyard proper. And so what we were looking at was the really wonderful character of these wood-framed, cedar shingled buildings, and that those are the bones that we love, and we really think that they have a lot of potential. So one of those buildings is a preservation. Maybe we make a new door facing one of the new parking lots, but there's a really great potential for preserving and having adaptive reuse there, because it even goes down a full basement depth down in the ground. So we have opportunity. In this case, new uses could even take that space and even have parking down there if we wanted, if there were residential uses on upper floors, for example. But then we have an introduction of a new building where in the existing building we have a piece that's out on the street that's a couple floors high. We have this one that's 2 floors above ground, and this one right here. And then we have a basement, and then there's basically a sort of a 1.5-story piece in between. So this is where Gordon was showing that we might actually take that piece out and then add more. This is the cross street in the plan, and then add a new, more modern building still, and add some more height to have a little bit more development potential for future economic opportunity there. And then we marry that with the historic piece in the front. So we get sort of historic bookends, and then we get a new piece through the middle. So we have really sort of a nice combination, a dynamic combination of the two of those. And then the last one, I will confess, I always fall in love with the ugliest building on the block. And so, to my delight, I found this off in the back. And so I just fell in love with it. I got some looks out of the corner of eyes this morning. We can do a lot with that, and we actually can. It's a building that has enormous potential, and we're not going to be able to, even as rough as it looks, if we bring in a new building, we won't have the sort of earthy character of this one. No, we're going to take some of the earthiness out of this also. But this is just a combination Gordon showed you on the plan. We have an adaptive reuse of this. We can punch holes in it to have more like garage doors. That's part of the historic fabric already. Those may have been other garage doors that are buried back behind the wash of concrete there. So we can open that up, and here's an addition sort of plugged onto the end of it for the transitional housing. So this could be community services, social services associated with the transitional housing, and really making a community space back in there for folks that, if we were to just go through and sort of do a profit-motive gentrification of this whole area, they're going to be sent somewhere else, to some other town, some other place, and to find their fortune. And we didn't really think that wasn't something we could sleep very well with last night. So this is just showing the combination of old and new, the accommodation of uses that are sometimes difficult to manage, and then also giving really hope for an optimistic future for the Millyard. So we've had fun with these. So who's next? Redevelopment. Okay.
Thank you, Bob. So this group took a little bit more of an aggressive approach, I guess. So make sure this works, cursor. Okay. So really we started talking about it, and we started with the proposed redevelopment of the NIMCOR site and the parcel across the street, which is being purchased by the same developer. The idea is that's kind of the center of the Millyard. So the thought here was, this 10 building here would be 2 stories, a parking garage. Maybe on top of the parking garage, they would have a green space and a pool deck, and then have residential going above that to pack in the density. And then as well as the 9 parcel, which would more or less be a residential parcel within commercial space and retail in the bottom. The buildings, since they're would be the same development, would be connected by a pedestrian bridge. So the idea was to get the residential space kind of in the back, because what we wanted is we wanted this green space opened up in front of it, which is that number 8. That green space would be playground, community area, similar to what others have shown before. So that was the idea of that. The traffic flows would have 2 entrances, which is similar to some of the other ones. Maintaining this one, and then also either doing a roundabout or another entrance here. As we move south, 6 would be a new parking garage to try to provide high-density parking rather than open parking. And then that would kind of follow the grade down. I think it's like a 20-foot grade separation there. So obviously the lower level of the parking garage would be within a floodplain and floodable. And then we would also have this outdoor parking area, which would provide support to the boat ramp. So we acknowledge there's a boat ramp down here. We thought it'd be a good idea to add a second one over here, so people can park and unload kayaks, canoes. So moving further south, we were going to preserve some of the existing building here, but open it up to the south through here. And then this is a little bit more aggressive. So the number 2 building is what we call the Innovation Hub building, which I'll show you. We did a quick rendering of that. So the idea of that is try to maintain the smaller shops or the innovation type shops that are down there right now, but also kind of pull it back from the canal about 50 feet or so. That would provide more space in front of it to open up that area to the community. We could also put some retail down there, restaurants. That would be also the grocery store, the Charrette would be down there as well. So that was the idea there. The number 4 building would continue to be kind of what is there now, the character, which is those small shops, the yoga studio, maybe a little gym, childcare. Then we also discussed a coffee shop too, was the other one. Let me know if I'm missing anything, guys. Okay. And then number 1 is another boat launch. So this is on the canal side. And the idea here would, this would be kind of, you know, a place where you could rent out kayaks, canoes, take a trip for an hour or 2, go down the canals, come back. So really, you would have 3 points to get on that river. Let's see. Oh, okay. And then as for gateways, so the gateway to the Mines Falls would be this pedestrian bridge. So it'd be lit, you would walk under it and go into Mines Falls. And then instead of having a pedestrian crosswalk here, we were envisioning a pedestrian bridge that would go over the parkway. So as you come in, you'd be entering the Millyard, you'd have the pedestrian bridge. You wouldn't be slowing down traffic as you go through. That would be connected to a, I guess, a welcome center is what we called it, with an elevator that would give you that ADA access to the pedestrian bridge, and would also have ramps over here. 13 would be that great building Bob was talking about adding on top of it. We were looking at it as a museum to kind of preserve the Millyard character. Because 13 and 12, these are great looking buildings, one of the oldest that are in the Millyard. And then 12, we were considering a maker space, artist in residence space. I think it was been used like that before. So the idea would be to renovate that. The dotted lines going across, sorry about that. The dotted lines going around the area is how we envision the river walk would progress. You can see here we pulled it up a little bit into the area, so you'd be bringing traffic around where the shops would be, was the idea of that. And then obviously on this other side here, we didn't talk too much about this because I know a lot of other people covered that. It was the same type of idea, having some fields down there, the boat ramp, maybe reducing the parking a little bit, and then either catwalking or board walking the trail around that end of it. So this would be more or less, this is like a quick rendering of what our thoughts were for the Innovation Center. So you would have commercial and retail probably in the bottom 2 levels there, and then either more residential or office space above it. You could have a bar, brewery, restaurant out front, and you're really right on the canal, which, which is prized space in a lot of cities. This is an example. This was built down in Malden. So this gives you an idea of that pedestrian bridge between 2 residential units. So, envision walking down to Millyard, pedestrian bridge across, connecting the 2. So residents in one side can get to the other and get to the parking garage. This is another quick shot of that. This is, So this building here, first 2 levels, this is a parking garage. And then you have an elevated pool with a green space on top for the residents. Here's another aerial picture of it. Manchester. It says that Manchester's Raise project that they're proposing. So they're putting a pedestrian bridge over Granite Street in downtown Manchester. Same thought here is to have a bridge like this over the Broad Street Parkway. Again, it would not slow down traffic. It provides a gateway to say you're entering the Millyard. You would have the stack right next to it, kind of a statement piece. As for parking garages, they can be nice to look at, which was the intent of this. This is the SNU Arena. You see it from 293. It actually looks pretty nice at night and during the day. You can also do different things, put some vegetation on it. Obviously we're not going to rock the palm trees, but maybe some, I don't know, I got my landscape architects here, but juniper, whatever, something that will grow. Another thought here, this is just a underground parking garage that opens up to the river. So what they did is buried the parking and then allowed access on top of the parking deck to look out over the river. Yeah. And then the other thing we had to add into it was some of the escape around the Innovation Center. So the use of patio block rather than pavement. Still a hardscape. We need it for the fire truck access. So kind of breaking up the pavement as you go through. Oh, we put them on a more. I'm sorry. We just put these slides together. So again, this is the green space on top of the parking is the idea of this, and it butts right up to the river. This is actually in Haverhill. So they did a nice work there, because before what happened is the grades drop and you would just look at that wall, and that's just a flood wall. But now you can look right out over. Community center, you saw some other pictures like that. Food trucks, event space, playground.
Thank you. Almost done, I promise. I have a couple slides on housing, a couple slides on art, and then we have some considerations and some closing thoughts, and then it'll be time for Q&A. So, housing. I want to start by saying that the city of Nashua is already doing some really great stuff, and I'm not going to look at them, but you have some exceptional staff here in planning and community and economic development. I work all over the state, and it is rare to find sort of this level of expertise and sort of creativity and willing to try stuff. So the city of Nashua was designated a housing champion last year by the New Hampshire Business of Economic Affairs. You should be very proud of that. Gives you access to some unrestricted funding that you can use to support some of these sort of priorities. City also has a housing revolving fund, and my organization, New Hampshire Housing, has awarded Nashua 2 housing opportunity planning grants. Those are HOP grants. The first one was to support and sort of enhance the housing components of the land use code update. The second one, which is just now getting started, is to support the comprehensive update to the subdivision site plan regulations, and to maybe create some pre-approved housing plans which will support the creation of ADUs not specific to this area. So my recommendation on housing is, first of all, to keep up the good work, because you're doing great stuff already. The second thing I'm going to talk about in regards to housing is supportive housing, shelters. While my expertise is in housing, it is specifically not in supportive housing and shelters, so I'm going to leave with some broad sort of things. So there were some significant concerns that came up yesterday during and Bob touched on this already, during the listening sessions about the potential for gentrification in this area when it's redeveloped and displacing the unhoused folks that are currently living there. So it seems obvious to me from talking with local leaders that Nashua needs some additional shelter beds or transitional housing or supportive housing with supportive services. So we at New Hampshire Housing do have funding for this. This is not, again, not my area of expertise, but we have the multifamily supportive housing finance program, the opioid use disorder supportive housing capital program, and then there are some other funds too. I mentioned those unrestricted funds, the housing revolving fund, and also the community development block grants. So you have some opportunities if you choose to use that ugly building that Bob fell in love with as transitional housing or similar. There's some opportunities if you want to prioritize shelter space. My recommendation, my broad recommendation, is to engage partners to explore strategies that are going to minimize that displacement that would happen if this is redeveloped. Currently, in the draft of the land use code, transitional housing is not a permitted use, but it's a draft, so that can be changed pretty easily. The last thing I'll say here is, they're not shaking their head at the word easily. Easily enough, you can do it. The last thing I'll say here is continuing to incentivize mixed income housing throughout the city, including in this area. Nashua does that by using inclusionary zoning, so that is offering density bonuses or additional density to developers to include, so you get some extra density, you get an extra floor, you get an extra whatever percent of density in exchange for a percent of the units being affordable. That's an awesome option, and Nashua has used that successfully. So I'm also going to talk a little bit about art, putting on my other hat. There was a comment yesterday that stuck with me in one of the listening sessions, which was about making sure that this area is integrated into the rest of downtown and making sure that it doesn't feel like a distinct or sort of different place, a different downtown. So one of the ways that I thought you could do that is by using public art. So the city of Nashua has a lot of really fantastic art, a ton of great murals. This bench that you see here is in the new library alley. Obviously, you have the sculptures throughout town from the symposium. And one of the things that I noticed during our 2-hour walking tour yesterday was that I saw very little of this. So you have an opportunity to integrate the downtown and the Millyard district by having art that sort of connects you to, supports wayfinding, follow your sort of painted bridge or your blazes, we'll show some examples, and creating kind of a grand entrance into the area. It also can help to increase activity. So I have a couple examples. This is a painted bridge that's in Cincinnati. It connects Cincinnati and Kentucky. So, you know, follow the painted bridge. It's a pedestrian bridge. Here's another painted bridge. We talked a little bit about yarn bombing, which you've probably seen before. So when you use yarn to put on either trees or like utility poles, you can blaze trails with yarn bombing. This is a sculpture that is also a play structure. It's in one of the pedestrian malls in Denver, Colorado. It is meant to be a sculpture, and it looks like a sculpture when you're just sort of glancing at it, but people with kids will know that you can have your kids play in it, so it's both sort of play structure and sculpture. And then this is, I threw this in because this is one of my favorite examples of how to sort of engage and get sort of increased pedestrian activity and some engagement from the community. The town of Durham, this was an artist-driven project, one night went through town and graffitied the whole town with googly eyes. it turned into a sort of collective scavenger hunt. People across the community went out to find all of the googly eyes. What it did was significantly increase foot traffic in our downtown. This was during the summer. This is Durham, New Hampshire. So University of New Hampshire increased foot traffic during the summer to those downtown businesses because that's when the students are there, and so they needed more population. So just sort of fun ways to get more feet on the ground using art. And again, a little bit of wayfinding, right? You can blaze a trail with googly eyes.
Okay, so just some last minute planning considerations before we wrap this up. So the city is already hard at work at a lot of these, but it's important to stay involved and stay informed. So some things that we think that would help would be expanding your tax increment financing district to include the Millyard properties, because right now it doesn't. So you can use that to try and fund some of your development, like infrastructure services, life and safety, etc. A lot of these goals are in your master plan already, so you know, your top goal was a couple of them were equitable and connected transportation networks, so that directly relates to what we did today. Redevelopment opportunity, the Millyard is a perfect opportunity for redevelopment and housing accessibility. So these were goals that the community decided were important to pursue. And currently the city is rewriting the land use code. So, and it's in draft form right now, so it's important to be involved with that. And you know, it will incorporate things like design guidelines, parking minimums, density, so all things that can impact what your redevelopment looks like, especially when you're talking about wayfinding and you know, different facades. It's important to have a cohesive design, a cohesive branding approach to give it more of a sense of place, and then a couple other things that would be helpful, I think, in a successful planning environment for the redevelopment of this area is to be proactive with some of the contamination issues and funding available for that. And then there are actually a lot of different parties in this area and associations, so I think bringing everyone to the table is crucial when we redevelop this and move forward. So with that, I'm going to give it to Jamie to wrap up.
Thanks. Awesome. So yeah, I just want to say we had a lot of fun. Thanks for inviting us here. You have a great city staff. I know it's been said, but they really helped us make the most of our time here, and we had a lot of fun. It was great to get to know Nashua a little bit more, to get to know the Millyard a lot more, and I will just say, as one of the co-leaders, it was a ton of fun to work with the volunteers. So I think it's also important to note that these volunteers volunteered their expertise to be here today. So please continue the momentum, keep it going. You know, I think it looks like a lot of people are continuing conversations and starting new conversations. So really keep talking about this. I think there's a lot of potential for the Millyard. Sorry, I kind of jumped the gun on that, but thank you again. It's been a pleasure to be here. So this is kind of the time where we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear for some Q&A. So thank you. Awesome, thanks. And you know, it was a real team effort. And so I'm going to try to answer some of the questions, but I might be handing these off to others if you have more specific questions. But does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask the volunteers?
That linear park you're thinking about along, you know, where the parking, all those big parking spaces is down by the water. Like in New Jersey, I noticed there are linear parks where they have like exercise stations or something. They're reasonably simple, you know, for push-ups, for, you know, that kind of thing. And I think that would help as well because people walk or jog along there, and that's what they would do. They would sort of stretch or whatever, that kind of a thing. The other thing, you've mentioned makerspace several times in these presentations. We have a Make It Labs down on Crown Street. They will eventually have to move, okay, because something else is going to happen down there eventually. So I would suggest that you might, I don't know if anyone's going to talk to them about that, because they're growing, and I think that would be an opportunity for get all that high-tech energy downtown for people to see. The bridge that I saw with the colored flooring would give me vertigo. Just thought I'd mention that. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just touch upon your second point. Yeah, we were notified that I guess there's not a permanent space for the makerspace, and so that kind of informed our recommendations. Anybody else?
As it turns out, this morning I had a meeting up in Concord at their Parks and Recreations building. And one, I didn't know they had one, because where I go, I don't always go over there. But I was just amazed. I mean, and I thought to myself, we have a Parks and Recreation department, but we do not have a Parks and Recreation building. And I mean, it was fascinating. It was walking into kind of like the feel of a YMCA, but then behind it, you had the ball fields and everything. And it's almost identical to what you're talking about here. And I think it would be a great idea if we thought about having the Parks and Recreation department there, where they had a library area. I was actually there for a meeting, so they had meeting rooms and that type of thing. But the place, I mean, every parking space was taken up. The outdoor space was being utilized, and I think in that particular area, for something free to the kids in that area, the families in that area, and having a building located there, I think it would be really a good idea. And one other thing, years ago when I was in Paris walking along the Seine, I mean, they have a lot of outdoor space that is utilized. I mean, like, they had, checkerboards on the ground, ABCs, so that grandparents were with children and having them spell out little words. And so the educational portion of it and the activity portion was actually part of the infrastructure, very similar to the idea of the sculpture that you had, but incorporating more of those things, because again, you have parents or grandparents bringing children and interacting with them and educating them, and it's all part of the community infrastructure.
Yeah, no, those are all great thoughts. Thank you.
Yes, I'm one of the principals at the Millyard Technology Park. Is it standard procedure not to come to the owners of the property and ask them what they think about the plan or get ideas? Is that standard for consultants that do these kind of planning things? Is there a reason for that?
Well, it's a good question. So I think a number of the property owners were represented last night. Earlier in the day, they came, and I can't speak to how the invitations went out, but we got some good. Oh, yeah.
So I'm his daughter. And I was here all day yesterday. I think what he's referring to is, we've been aware for a long time that the city is working with groups like you folks to come up with concepts for this area. And we get notified about coming to a 2-day thing like this, which is helpful and great, but then it's kind of like these big ideas come up about carousels and skating rinks and things that, we do have a bit of a private property issue. That's kind of the elephant in the room. So he hasn't been available to participate in the talks prior to this point. And like I said, it's helpful to be here for this intensive extravaganza with all of this, but we feel that it's important to integrate the property owners sooner rather than later, before people get these quite involved plans put together where a lot of this may not be feasible.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a fair point. So I guess I'll answer it with a few different responses. I think the first is our goal is to really stretch the imagination of what can be done, and it's not personal, right? Like, you know, we did it across the subject area that we were given. I would also say that I think, you know, we really feel like what we propose can also add value, you know, add potential revenue, add value. But yeah, I apologize. We're only here for a day and a half, but I would encourage, you know, having these conversations and you know, I guess we don't know your, yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah, my feelings aren't hurt. I just think I could save,
Well,
could have saved you.
it's like we're giving
saved you some
expectations,
time.
right? And it's like a high bar, right? Because you've seen a picture of what we've done, right? And now maybe someone's expecting
If
that
I
to be
could
done.
tell you how much room we need just for snow removal alone is a major, major problem in the winter. Unless we could push it all into the river. We've never done that. Yeah. So there's a lot of little things that make a difference. That when you talk to the people that own the property, that when you live there every day and you see things, you just
No.
you can't help but know a little bit more than the average planner, you know.
Yeah, for sure. We don't know how the operations work, and like I said, unfortunately, we've only been here for the better part of 2 days. But yeah, I mean, I guess I hope, you know, and you know, my family owns real estate as well, so I get the realities of operation. But I guess you know, hopefully we provided some recommendations that you and others can take away, and maybe it, you know, maybe they happen, maybe they don't, you know, but we just wanted to kind of stretch the thinking.
I wanted to ask, are you Mr. Barnett? No. No, because I think Barnett owns some of the property where you were making all sorts of things and kind of going, well, how's that gonna work? I mean, I don't know if he's interested in selling it. I mean, just curious.
Yeah, I mean, did you
I think the short answer is that we're here to just provide some ideas. Obviously, none of this is going to happen without the involvement of private property owners. And so it may or may not be something that is quote unquote feasible, but I mean, or desirable by the individual owners. But this is an idea where both property owners can be collaborative with one another, as well as collaborative with the city and with other groups. So this is, I would characterize it as more of a vision rather than a plan per se, because you're absolutely right. There's a ton of detail that needs to be considered. We're just putting the idea on the table, and there's a lot more discussion to come after this. Yeah.
Anybody else? Any other questions?
I'll take these. Yes.
Kind of a two-part question. Great ideas. Thank you for all the work. This is a lot of fun. The first part is, what's the overall implementation timeline that a project like this might take? Like, how long does it take until you're done? The second part of that is, what is the first, who has the responsibility to take what from here to where in order to put some action to this?
Sure, I'll take a stab on that, and if anyone else from the team wants to go. So the first question was the timeline, right? How long does it take?
Yes.
You know, I think with all due respect to the landowners in the room, right? You know, it's not something we can dictate. I think what we tried to show in the two different scenarios was, here's some what's called like adapted reuse. Here's some things you could probably start doing today, right? Actually, I would say there are 3 phases, right? You had the open space, which was just like, how can, you know, you improve the open space, the recreation, the options, you know, as is today, right? Do you add a level to a building? Do you kind of, replace buildings? That's probably like a medium turn. And then as you saw, the last group was really, let's re-envision the whole space. Like what could it be if, pie is the sky kind of stuff. So I don't have a good answer for you on that. I mean, I think the land use code update will help. We'll give some guidance there. But I really think it's how motivated the community wants to be to make that happen.
Like, how long did Malden take?
I do not. Is someone familiar with Malden?
Yeah, it was over 5 years. I mean, Malden was interesting because, it was tearing down the city hall, tearing down the police department, and a church, and redeveloped this entire block. They actually put the city hall into, They actually put the city hall into the development. So it's the first time ever you have a multi-use building that include municipal use in the country. Very unique, but yeah, I mean that's took 5 years, easy, and that was with the cooperation of the city and wanted to redo that entire center.
I'll do that right now. So I think one of the observations that we had over the past 2 days, and we had a lot of paper out on the tables that we were working on that had different design proposals. Just move it away from here. Move it away, so I don't have a fuzz box. It was various proposals for parcels that have been put out to bid to developers. So we spent a lot of time looking at those. A couple of us woke up in the middle of the night thinking about those. And I think what we found, and this is not fully aware of how you put, how the city puts RFPs out for development proposals. If there isn't a framework like this, then what you will get is a parcelization of the whole district into individual pieces at a time, and each proposal will be in the service of the developer interest of that, and may or may not have other interests that may be, like things that we talked about for the past 2 days. So we are hoping that that can kind of slow down a little bit, so you can have an opportunity to move along a little bit more of a vision and a little bit more of a framework before parcels are put out, and then really have in mind what are the public interests in the city making a parcel available for a developer purchase or development proposal, plan, and all the finances, everything that goes with a very, what is normally a pretty complicated thing is there's also a public interest in the sale of the public property that starts to get at some of the things that we colored green today, just as an example. So that would be one part of it. Clearly the zoning and the housing, the various things that you're doing to revise your master plan, your regulations can all go in support of this. But regulations need a vision to have as a foundation for their very essence, their very being. So, and so we think there are a couple of things that maybe the cart is a little before the horse on that.
How you doing? I was just wondering if you guys assess the public or city-owned land versus private land. What is the ratio? Is it 80% private and 20, or can you give us some idea of how much of it is private versus how much of it is maybe city-owned?
Do you know I don't know the amount, but there is a. Oh, is there one here? Hold on, give me a second. All the way. All right. Let's see. Nope. Sorry. Bear with me. All right. So that I can tell it from here. Okay. So if you can see, is there a better one? We have some plans while we're doing this. There is yellow area that shows publicly owned land. Okay. And I don't know the percentage. I don't think that was something that came up. We did explore it, but I would say we looked at it holistically. Because all the parcels are kind of irregular, if you will. So sure. Not like blocks.
If I could make a comment on that, there are also two types of city property there. Part of it is the park, which has certain
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I don't know if you can see it, but it's, so I'm going to try to do my best here. There's like a yellow hue, and you can sort of see, but again, sorry, we had trace paper over it and then scanned it, so it's maybe a little difficult. But we do, if someone wants to see a map afterwards, we can definitely show you. Yeah. Anybody, any other questions? Well, I just want to say thank you for having us. It was a pleasure to be here. I hope we kind of, at the very least, I hope we got this discussion going or re-energized this conversation. And yeah, you know, we'll continue to check in. If we can ever be a part of it, let us know. But we're just really excited to see what happens in the Millyard. So thank you again.